How's it going, everyone? So earlier, there were a couple videos I made where there were some predictions made about how the quarterfinals of the World Cup would go based on how the group stage and the round of 16 went. And specifically, the prediction was that a prediction cannot be made based on goal differential. So leading up to the quarterfinals, every team in the quarterfinals had played 4 games. And if you look at the goal differential for each of those games, now goal differential is the goals a team scored minus the goals scored against them. So each team has different goal differentials, and we ran an ANOVA test to see, is there a statistically significant difference between the performance of these 8 teams with regards to goal differential? And the result of the ANOVA test was that no, it's actually a very reasonable assumption that there is no statistically significant difference between these teams in terms of their goal differential. And if the tournament were repeated many times, you'd see them have the same goal differential on average, which means it's not a good predictor of how they will perform in the quarterfinals. Now, I won't go through how the ANOVA test was done, what it means. I'll link to the previous videos in the description of this one, but it's interesting to see, okay, well, how did it turn out? How did those games end up being played out? So here we have those 4 games, the average goal differential before the quarterfinals for each team, and in the green we have which team won. So Netherlands, Argentina. Argentina won. Their average goal differential is lower, 1 versus 1.5. Croatia versus Brazil. Croatia won. Average goal differential lower, 0.75 versus 1.25. England, France. France won. Average goal differential prior to the game lower, 1.25 versus 2.5 for England. And Morocco, Portugal. Morocco won. Their average goal differential before this game so far in the tournament, 0.75 versus Portugal's 1.75. In every one of the games, the team with a lower average goal differential going into it, that's the team that won. This supports the prediction of the previous videos that there is no statistically significant difference between the goal differentials of the 8 teams going into the quarterfinals. Now, one thing we mentioned was that the average goal differential of Brazil, France, and Portugal might be artificially low. Because if we look at the third game that they played in the group stage, for Brazil, France, Portugal, let me scroll to this tab here, they have -1 in that third game. But that's after winning their first 2 games and guaranteeing a spot in the round of 16. So they didn't have to try so hard during that third game. So that -1 in goal differential might not be a good indicator of their performance. Well, if we change that -1 to their average goal differential in the other 2 games in the group stage, then we think, okay, maybe we'll correct for that artificially low number, but the result we see is the same. Brazil's goal differential becomes 1.875, still higher than Croatia's 0.75. Croatia won. France's becomes 2, but it's still lower than England's 2.5, and France still won. And Portugal's becomes 2.375, even higher than Morocco's 0.75, and Morocco still won. So, supports that result of the ANOVA test that the difference in goal differential between these teams is not statistically significant, and so it cannot be used as an indicator of performance. Now, someone who does not understand soccer at all might look at these results and think, well, that's interesting. The team with lower average goal differential won every single time, 100% of the time, at least in these quarterfinals. So maybe that means that a lower average goal differential going into the quarterfinals is an excellent indicator of winning. And of course that makes no sense, because a team that plays better should have a higher average goal differential than a team that plays worse. It just happens to be that in this case, the goal differentials are so close that the difference is not statistically significant. Even though that difference exists, it is not great enough to have any sort of meaning in terms of a goal differential being so much bigger than in other teams that it actually indicates something. And this illustrates the danger of making predictions or forming ideas about how the world works based on statistical results without understanding what those numbers actually represent and whether there actually is a logical reason why a certain number should be a predictor for something. Yeah, in 100% of cases in these quarterfinals, the team with lower goal differential, average goal differential, won. That is absolutely true. It's also absolutely false that average goal differential being lower should indicate a more likely victory. And to understand that that's false, you can't just look at that data. You have to actually understand how soccer works. Similarly, when making predictions, when forming understandings based on statistical data, it's not enough to just look at the data. You have to understand the workings, the mechanics, the dynamics of whatever it is those statistics are describing, right? And that's why there's that famous quote. There's three kinds of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. Now, what is interesting is that the two finalists of the last World Cup, Croatia and France, they both made it to the semifinals. That's an interesting coincidence. Or maybe it's not. So maybe there is some indicator of good performance. But at least in this tournament, average goal differential is not that indicator. And that's not a surprise, because if we look at how soccer works, to win and get the 3 points for a win that'll help you get to the round of 16, it doesn't mean by how many goals you win, unless it's a special tiebreaker kind of case. If you win by 2 goals or by 7 goals, it's still the same 3 points for a victory. Round of 16, if you win by 1 goal or 7 goals, or 0 goals in regular and extra time, and then you just win in shootouts, like in the case of Croatia and Morocco in the round of 16, a win is still a win. And the more goals you score, the less incentive there is to score more goals. If you're winning by 1 goal, there's a lot of incentive to score another goal to solidify that winning position. If you're winning by 4 goals, there really isn't incentive to score more. You can feel comfortable playing defensively. So that actually dampens what average goal differential could be in terms of the incentives that the game creates. So it's actually not surprising that there would not be a statistically significant difference in average goal differential between teams that win and teams that lose, once you get to a high enough stage where the teams are in some way comparable. But some other indicator might work better. For example, what percent of the time is possession held by one team or another? Well, either way, we will have an interesting semifinal, right? We might get a France-Croatia round 2. Maybe Argentina will make it to the finals, and Messi will take his shot to win the World Cup, or maybe Morocco will continue to surprise everyone. So we'll see how the semifinals go, and I'll see you next time.